Well, a very good evening to everyone. A warm welcome to you. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We're so glad to have you here. My name is Jipeni, but I actually go by Pen Pen. So, just a little bit about me. You may be able to tell from my accent that I'm not Singaporean. I am from India and I grew up in Thailand and have now lived in Singapore for about 7 years. I am a staff of Cruise Singapore, and I have the privilege of being your host tonight. And I am so looking forward to the conversation we will be having together. UNVEILx is a series of talks organized by Cruise Singapore, and we have a desire and a vision and a passion to see youths just having open conversations and being able to share and ask and talk with Christian mentors. So, as part of the UNVEILx series, the hashtag Ask Me Anything is a series where we raise different topics that are prevalent to youths today. It will be held in a Q&A style of discussion with a panel of youth and young adults, just sharing their thoughts and posing questions to our experienced speakers. So for tonight's session, we will be tackling the topic of adulting. Well, the word adulting cannot really be found in the dictionary. In fact, I still get autocorrected whenever I type out this word. But actually, this word has been largely adopted into the millennial vocabulary. So, for instance, you might say, just paid my bills today, hashtag adulting, or I have so many errands to run. Adulting is so hard. So, from crossing from being a kid to adult can be rather daunting, it can be rather disorienting, and maybe even scary. There are no manuals, there are no schools you can go to, and there are no textbooks on how to adult, which is why it is very important to have conversations like we are having tonight about various aspects about what it means to not just be an adult, but on how to succeed at it. And so, with us on our panel is Pastor Andre. Pastor Andre is the lead pastor of City Church Singapore. And then we have Chanel, who is the founder of Our Bare Hands. So, from their website, Our Bare Hands is an international collaborative platform that creates unique and quality lifestyle pieces with small producing communities around the world. And then on our youth panel, we have Yvonne. Yvonne is from SIMGE, studying cybersecurity. That is very impressive. Joey, she is a fresh grad from Poly and dips into social work. And she actually just started working 5 months ago at a social service organization for youths. And then we have Gerald, who is a fresh grad from NUS, currently working as a music teacher at a primary school. And he hopes to see through God's spiritual lenses by outpouring his love towards the young children of the school. And so, with that, we just want to get to know a little bit about those of you who are tuning in as well. There will be a poll popping up on your screen very soon. It's totally anonymous, so please just be as honest as possible, and so that it can help us just understand more about you and more about your thoughts. So the first question is, what are your biggest fears in adulting? There could be money matters, it could be relationships, work-life balance, career. And then the second question is, when do you think adulting stops? Some people think that maybe it's at a certain age that adulting stops, maybe when you have a certain career, and maybe when you have your own family. Yeah, just we will wait for a few seconds for you to finish answering. All right, so we have the results here. It looks like a lot of people have a concern or fear of not knowing how to handle office politics. That is a very real fear. Balancing work, life, family, and friends. Yeah, for sure. And then finding a future spouse. Also a shameless plug. There's going to be another webinar in about 2 weeks' time about similar to this topic about relationships. So you can also tune in for that one. All right, and then when do you think adulting stops? Okay, most of you say, I doubt it never stops. And then when I have my own family, okay. Awesome. Thank you guys for answering the poll. So before we actually begin, let me run through a little bit about what's going to be happening tonight. In the first segment, we're going to have a panel who's going to be answering some of the questions both from me and from the youths. And then in the second segment, we will dive into some Q&A from you guys. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. It will be located on the left side of your Zoom panel bar. And just to let you know that we will be only answering 3 questions. So make sure that you upvote the ones you're dying to know the answer to. And so I think we have heard a lot from me already. So without much further ado, let's just dive right in. You guys ready? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So my first question to the panel, to everyone here, bouncing from one of the poll questions, when do you think adulting stops?
I agree with the poll. I don't think it ever stops. Yep.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a Chinese saying that says 活到老学到老. You are learning until you are still aging. So yeah, it never stops for me too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, similar. I feel that adulting is like growing up, so we never stop growing. We'll keep learning new things and adapting to different things in life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur. I think like maybe my version of adulting is slightly different. I think everybody thinks like adulting's like responsibilities and like managing bills and stuff like that, which I mean it's part and parcel of growing up and stuff like that. But I think maybe another point to consider also would be how we also handle human relationships. Yeah, I think that's one thing that comes with adulting and maturing and being able to connect with others as well, and showing how we really we are able to love another person. Maybe it's like somebody who like is our life partner, or maybe it could be somebody that we really don't like how do we approach them? I think that's also part and parcel of the adulting.
Right. And so kind of related to that question, when do you guys think adulting actually starts?
Yeah, I think it, I mean, based on my own understanding of what adulting means, I think it's really about learning to become independent. And so I definitely don't think that it's tied to a certain number, which I guess none of the participants also think so, because for me, I guess like right now after uni was when I'm forced to think about all these questions about adulting, right? But I think some people are also forced based on their circumstances to start thinking about adulting at a young age, like 8 years old. So I definitely don't think it's pegged to a certain number. And I'm sure there are people who also don't start adulting till they're like 30 plus 40. So I think it's really
Right.
when you are forced to put in situations where you just have to make decisions yourself. And this can be in terms of career decisions, this can be in terms of like relationships, or even like what course to take in uni, right? Those things, it might not really seem like you're becoming an adult, but these are just little steps that you take to become more and more independent. Yeah.
Yeah, I before this webinar, I had to Google what adulting means. So give me some grace. I am the oldest on the panel, so I've like to Google terms. And adulting is really about to me, just the base definition. It's about responsibility and how you manage, navigate, and fulfill these responsibilities. Today, I felt like an adult. I woke up in the morning, I paid my credit card bills. I went to work. I did a bunch of meetings involving budgeting, and then I went to the hospital and did like a pre-birth class with my wife, and we learned how to breastfeed and swaddle our baby that's coming January. And so I feel like that's my wife there. I feel like an adult, and so and to me, adulting really is about how you embrace responsibility beyond yourself, how you're grow to be responsible for someone else. In this case, for me, it's my wife and my baby. But also taking responsibility for choices that you make, and being mature about it. No matter how it turns out. And I think that's really what characterizes an adult and a mature person. Yep.
What about the younger folks?
For myself, I don't really think, like everyone said, I don't think you can pinpoint a specific age. Yeah, but I think the first ever adulting experience I had was after secondary school, when I completed my O levels. At that point of time, my parents were only highest tier of education is O levels. So beyond that, they were helpless. They didn't understand the whole JC poly kind of system. And that was when I realized that, hey, my parents are not going to make the decision for me. I have to make it myself. And it's scary because what if I don't choose a good school? What if I don't do well in JC or in poly? The whole responsibility lies on me. I think the key word in adulting is responsibility. Yeah, if it's good, hooray, but if it's bad, we learn from it. Yeah, and we bear the repercussions of it, and hopefully we learn from it and we become a better adult. Yeah, and it's not just a specific age, but I think it's like a very slow transition also. So at O levels, at 16 was O levels, and when I was in uni, I had to start working because my parents didn't give me pocket money anymore. So that was when I realized, oh no, now I have another adulting to do. It's managing my finances and my resources, right? I need to go find a part-time job to feed my stomach. I want to go meet my friends, do all these kind of things. And adulting is just really having so many transitions, but you making the decisions, you being responsible for those decisions. What about Yvonne or Joey? What do y'all think about adulting? Like, when does it start or stop?
Yeah, as I mentioned just now, I feel that adulting is like growing up. So which means to be less dependent on your family members, or especially your parents, who gives the allowance and like takes care of all your needs. So I think for me, adulting start for me was like when my mom passed on. So like then I had to like get my own allowance, especially after O levels, and it's like, okay, I have to figure this out because usually she's the one that's handling for me. So when that was gone, of course, thank God for the church with support and advisors, and then just figuring out, okay, doing part-time job. Yeah, that's where I start to learn like, oh, okay, how do I have sufficient now? Yeah. So that start quite early for me, but I believe it's like varies for different people. Yeah.
I think for me, I have a slightly different definition in terms of adulting. Yeah, I think it starts. I think for me, adulting started when I first learned how to care for someone else. Yeah, I think like be it maybe like a friend or a family member, I think that's where like when you first start to learn how to care for someone else, that's where the responsibilities flow because you feel that burden of like needing to care for that person. And that comes with like attempting to love them or like work with them and walk with them, journey with them. So I think for me, adulting started when I first had to learn how to care for my mom. Yeah, when she was going through her stage of depression and anxiety. And that started really young. So probably like maybe even like at 5 or 6, I had to start managing and learning how to deal with like her anger management and stuff like that. And I guess that's where like adulting started for me. Yeah. When does adulting stop? I doubt so. Yeah, I think we always are trying to learn how to care for someone else. We're always trying to learn how to bear different responsibilities. So I don't think really like adulting stops. Yeah, but you definitely grow each time a valuable lesson has been taught. Yeah.
Great. So
and I think I think a lot of fears that come from adulting is the thinking that you have to be dependent and reliant on yourself. But I guess kind of like just throwing in a like a spiritual, like bringing God into the picture, right? Thinking of how if you know that you have this father who is all powerful and all like loving and is so personal to you, in that sense, adulting never really starts because you have someone that you can always depend on. Yeah, I think there is that balance that we have to manage, like yes, growing up and being an adult is it's a responsibility that we have to take on, right? And this ownership over your life and maybe the life of the lives of other people as well. But on the other hand, knowing that you're not doing it alone and that you should just never be independent in that sense, right? Because we have to always depend on God. Yeah.
So Chanel, you touched on just the fear that people may have in terms of adulting and things like that. So just for you guys, what are your biggest fears and challenges in adulting?
I think for me, the biggest challenge so far, I'm sure there are going to be more. The biggest challenge so far is for me to really understand who I'm living for. I think as I grow, I start to realize that the temptation to please people it gets stronger, because maybe you take on more roles in your life. I guess for me, also like starting my own business, like, and having that question every day, right? Like, why am I doing my business and who am I doing it for? Am I doing it for myself, my business partners, my customers, or my family? And the challenge is really an everyday question to ask myself, like, who are you doing it for? And knowing that, I mean, the answer, right, as believers is really the one and only God that all these belongs to, and all that you're doing should be because of him and for him, but because that requires like faith, right, and not relying on what you see with your physical eyes. And so that is a challenge for me. And with regards to fears, I think the biggest fear for me is the fear of not I guess one is that not knowing what I don't know, because I guess going to become an adult, you just don't really know what's in front of you unless you like step into that. And maybe you can consult people around you, but you kind of never really know what it's like until you are in that like position, right? And I think the second one, I guess a bigger fear of mine is not just fearing that I won't be a good steward of things that God has given me, because I feel like for me, like going through my teenage years was when I start to form my identity, right? But like having this, like going to be an adult is where my identity starts really being questioned and being tested. Yeah. And yeah, and so adulting is really about knowing who you really are. And for me, I guess as a Christian, knowing who you really are in God, and questioning things that God has given me, right? Like be it my time, my like the money, the gifts. I guess like a very real question for me I ask myself is, yeah, like like starting my own business the best way to serve God with what He has given me, right? Or with the money that He has given me, like is how I'm spending the wisest way. And like the thing is that you never really know whether like you are doing the right thing or not. So in that sense, like knowing that you are a steward and not an owner is also liberating, right? Because ultimately, yeah, like there is, you are accountable to someone, of course, yes. So that comes the responsibility to do it well, right? But knowing that the outcome of whatever you've put your hands into, it belongs to God, who is the owner of it. So in a sense, like my fear and my comfort is the same thing, that I have to be accountable to someone who everything I have belongs to. Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a good response. I think that's amazing. Yeah. I think I'll just share my fears surrounding adulting. When I was growing up, like my report book always says, Andre is a responsible and conscientious young boy. And so responsibility is like my favorite. I love taking responsibility. I love fulfilling responsibility. And so for me, like the biggest fear surrounding adulthood and all that I have going on in life is that I will not fulfill these responsibilities. And I think there is a legitimate kind of like fear surrounding it, but oftentimes it teeters over into something really dysfunctional as well. And so, I started pastoring a church at 27 years old. And so I was really young then and was driven, trying my best. But I hit a spot where I was like uber duper burnt out. I was battling with all kinds of crazy stuff, and I wasn't sleeping well. I was anxious all the time, and I realized, that even in that place where I was, quote unquote mature, I was pastoring a church, I was doing all the adult things, but I had no joy. I wasn't happy. I lost a sense of wonder. I lost a sense of fun. I was just functional. I was just a functional adult. And that's my biggest fear, that in the pursuit of like looking right to everyone else and fulfilling all these tasks, I lose a sense of personal well-being. I lose a sense of my, what brings me joy, what brings me, gladness. I lose a sense of gratitude, always looking at things that aren't and things that are not yet, and losing that sense of perspective. And so like a crucial practice that I adopt once a week is I take a Sabbath. Every Monday is my off day. And so, I switch off my WhatsApp notifications. I tell my congregation, like, unless, you are my wife or your surname is Tan, or you're dying, you can't reach me, And so I turn off my phone. I go on the Sabbath, I go on walks, I cook for my wife, I enjoy these things. So I put aside my responsibilities for just a day and just enjoy God, enjoy my family. And I think that has been really helpful and helps allay all these fears that sometimes gets really overwhelming and does such damage to the soul. And yeah. Yep.
Wow. What about the rest of you?
For me, I feel that the challenge, because I just started out working full time, now really graduated, not studying. I think, or rather, all along, I think the challenge is prioritizing. Like, there are different. Okay, starting out, yeah, we have a lot of friends. Okay, we want to hang out. Okay, for me, I'm kind of like, I love to be around people. So yeah, so when people show me out to go and try this new thing and like just to hang out, or like, oh wow, secondary school, long time never catch up, hey, let's catch up, then it's like yeah, then but at the same time, then I know I need to save, and I have like different things to look at in terms of managing my finances. Yeah, so the challenge is that like given the freedom as an adult, like okay, you make your own decisions, but then how do you make the decision and how to be wise? Yeah, and we were mentioning like how yeah, we have to be good stewards of what God has given, but sometimes I'm quite blinded by what's in front of me and be like, okay, this is a need. I feel that I need to do this. Maybe it may come up from like, okay, I want to please men, so I react and then then end up being unwise. So yeah, has been a challenge for me to be focused on what I need to prioritize. Like I will even compromise on, to be very honest, I may compromise on ties because I feel that I'm really running low and like I need to save for the next month because my salary hasn't come in yet. Or like even circuit breaker, like I couldn't, because I just graduated, right? Then circuit breaker happened and I was waiting for to enter a job. Then I was like, wow, it was a struggle for me to tithe, like honestly. Yeah, so it's the challenge is to for me to prioritize lah. Yeah.
I can go next. I think for me, the biggest fear would be wondering who I will lose next. Yeah, I think that stems from like going to like a lot of funerals, but also going to a lot of weddings and like seeing how people are transitioning to like the different phases of their life. You see like, and then you just realize that like, actually time doesn't stop for you. Time never does. And in a blink of an eye, it's like, I'm here like studying in my final year now. And like, it was only maybe like moments ago that I felt like I was just like in my secondary school uniform collecting my O-level cert. That's like how time feels like for me and maybe for many other people. It just feels like it's moving so fast that you just realize that, oh, like now you're an adult and people throw you the question, what now? Yeah. And you also slowly start to realize that you are going to lose people. Yeah, be it through like their health issues or maybe through falling out and all that. So I think the biggest fear definitely would be wondering who I will lose next. Yeah, but I think I'm also like constantly reminded that the time on this earth that we have is so fleeting and so short. And are we supposed to just choose like a lifestyle of like, oh, you only live once, so like let's just like party all day and like socialize all day and have fun and like, you know, like the typical uni life of like clubbing until 3 a.m. I mean, without all this, yeah, but like, yeah. And so is that really the life that God has called us to live? Yeah, which I think the answer should be no lah. Yeah, I think God has called us to go even more and go one step further, which is to consciously live out like his gospel that we as his followers have accepted. Yeah, so I think that's like a fear, but at the same time it brings me as much of a fear is also a constant reminder that like, yes, the time on this earth that we have, though limited, but yet we are able to treasure it because God has given us like this time as well. Yeah. And I think challenge probably is like what to do with it then. Like, what do I do with my time? Yeah, what do I do with my life? Like, I mean, it's so simple for like, I think for people around my age and some of my friends even, we come together for dinners and we'll be like, what is life? we'll have this like midlife crisis of like, what is my life? And then you look at your life and be like, my life is just a mess. Let's like it's a mess. It's just a bowl full of mess. Yeah. And I think that's yet something so unique about our lives and our journey. Yeah. And that how it constantly reminds you that like throughout the ups and downs at the same time, like God really is there to provide and to journey and to provide people and like wisdom to journey with you, to walk with you through your different seasons. Yeah, some people may be people that you have felt so close to during that season, but now you feel so far apart. Yeah, but that's all like part and parcel of walking in this life and being able to grow as a person as well.
Finally, me. Yeah. I think my biggest fear is very simple. I think there's no yardstick to measure how well I am adulting. Like, who's gonna tell you, hey, good job, you paid your bills today. Hey, bad job, you paid your bills late today. No one's gonna tell you whether you're doing the right thing or not. And it's very scary because, like, you're like a blind man walking through a cave. You don't know whether you're gonna exit out of this cave or not. At the end of the day, it's really your own journey. But I think that's the beauty about not having a yardstick also, because you can make your own decisions. And if you succeed, you can feel like, hey, I did something positive, right? I did adulting well today. Yeah. Another challenge also that I think not only I face, but every Singaporean face is that we don't give ourselves room to fail. Yeah, we don't give ourselves room to learn, to fail. Yeah, I look at my university days. I see my friends, it's either grade A or nothing. There's no B, there's no C. It's A or nothing. And they stress themselves over eating, no sleep, and even my primary school children nowadays, there's exams coming, right? They want to give the best homework to the teacher. What do? They copy from the best student, give me model answers. But that's not the whole intention, right? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to be someone that you're not becoming, right? So yeah, I really think one of the things we can learn as we adult is give ourselves room to fail. Yeah, give ourselves time to learn from our mistakes also. Because as Singaporeans, we hate the F on our report card. But sometimes you have to go through to get the F, in order to get the A in the next season. Yeah, so those are my thoughts about adulting, my biggest fear. And of course, I still struggle with it every day, whether I'm still doing a good job or not. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about giving ourselves room to fail and learning from our mistakes. And then like what Yvonne was saying about transitions and losing people. And then even what Joey said about balancing friends, managing finances. And then what also Pastor Andre was saying about how he started to lose the wonder and like the joy, and how eventually he started to take Sabbath, where he could take intentional time to just enjoy life. And so there are a lot of things that that we are all kind of navigating in terms of balancing. And so with our next question, how do we manage and balance work and then social life and then family responsibilities? There just seems to be a lot of things going on. And so as a Christian, how do we balance everything? Yeah, just throwing it out there.
Anybody want to take it first?
I'll go. I think my answer is probably the
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, I pastor, and so these worlds kind of converge very often. And so I think the question is extremely sound. There seems like there's a lot on the plate. I have this, I have that, I have this, I have that, and I think the notion of balance I'd like to challenge. I think many times we try to manage our lives as though we're spinning plates. I need to balance. I need everything to be the same level. Make sure I'm giving adequate attention or equal attention to everything. I think sometimes that approach kind of pulls us back from actually giving specific items and situations the appropriate amount of focus. And so, the way I view life is, I don't really, play to the notion of balance. I think at times we oscillate, at times we emphasize. I think the emphasis comes with like changing life seasons, for example. And so for me personally, my big emphasis now is I'm preparing to start a family. And so I'm spending a lot of time building strong foundations, in the way I relate my wife, in the way we manage our finances. So I'm going out a lot less, hanging out with the boys a lot less, spending a lot more time with my wife because I want to make sure we have enough couple time before the kid comes. And so, so I think life is like that. It's a lot more dynamic than we think it is, and we shouldn't view it in boxes or in like a fixed, rigid kind of framework. But allow yourself the freedom, the margin to be able to lean in and emphasize different aspects, but also allow the Spirit to lead you, to give you grace in certain areas. I think that's an incredible advantage that we have as followers of Jesus. We have the Holy Spirit who speaks to us, who guides us, who leads us, who gives us grace. And let's lean into the Spirit and trust in His wisdom and His guidance for how we ought to do, like beyond just ministry stuff in church. The Spirit wants to breathe life and give you wisdom even in the daily affairs of life. Yeah.
What about Chanel? Especially with having your own company and things like that. How do you balance?
Yeah, I think that was a big struggle in the beginning for me. Okay, I mean, my company is only like 1 year plus, so we are still in the beginning. But yeah, I think because actually I took a semester off school to start Bare Hands. And so during that period of time, my life was really just about work. And okay, I may not be a pastor in that sense, but I think like Bare Hands is also a lot of different parts of my life coming together. It's my family and my friends are very involved. The people I meet in work are kind of like my friends also, and my business partners are people I do ministry with in church, and Bare Hands itself is also a ministry that we see ourselves like serving God with. And so in that sense, because it's so converging, it was difficult for me to see Bare Hands as work. It was kind of like everything coming together. And so then I started compromising on certain things, like friends and family. People just kept saying that I was just too busy for them. And maybe it's just that season of my life, but I think looking back, I could have really set better boundaries. I think, but it also depends on your situation. So for me, my family is very close and very tight knitted, and so in that sense, it's quite I wouldn't call it high maintenance, but we really spend a lot of time together. And so when I became so consumed with work, they really felt like I was like drifting apart from them. And so then, like, as I went along, I realized that okay, I had to set boundaries, right? I can't just go home at like 9 p.m. every single day, And so with that, it took conversations also, because when we started our own business, there was no such thing as like work timings. There was no like office time. It was just like, okay, what needs to get done to get what needs to get done in order to start this business, and like how do I get these things going, because if you don't move, like the business doesn't move. And I guess that was a lot like that when we first started. And so setting boundaries helped lah. I guess just the concept of okay, let me trying to go home for dinner as much as possible, like at least the majority days of the week. And that it's not about being religious about it, but I think it's about reminding yourself that there are other aspects of my life than just work. And I think I think one thing I had to learn growing up is also learning to say no. It's something that I find very difficult. Even just like growing up in church, like people kind of keep asking like, oh, do you want to design this? Do you want to like help on this committee? It's just so difficult for me to say no. For me, it's like yeah, if I have this pocket of time, it means that I can actually do it. But then it leads to, it might not be wise lah. I learned after a while. Yeah, because sometimes like saying no to things leaves you more room to give your 100% in other things also. Like to me, I think I need to understand when I'm reaching like the saturated point, such that when I say yes to more things, it's actually compromising on other aspects of
Right.
my life. Like, and I totally agree in that there are different seasons in your life, right? Like I mean, in this season you are called to focus on this thing and do it well, you know, while still managing other things, not like you completely drop them. But yeah.
Yeah, I loved what you said about like setting boundaries and having those conversations to set expectations. And then I also love what Pastor Andre was saying about how actually is there really a balance? You know, sometimes there are aspects of our lives that might need to take more priorities, and sometimes we can just need to maybe lean into those more. And actually, there doesn't really have to be a balance per se, and maybe people's definition of balance may be different, and so having expectations on other people as well might also be more harming than helpful. So yeah, thank you guys for just answering the questions that I have for you guys. So right now we're just gonna go into our youths asking Pastor Andre and Chanel their questions that they have brought. Would Joey like to start first?
Yeah, we were at that question just now. I didn't know how to answer because I'm still figuring out. Yeah, so it's similar, like about balancing. Like I just mentioned how I faced the challenge of being wise, prioritizing. So yeah, so I'll just share a bit of what I have to manage in my life lah. So there's a dependent at home because my sister has special needs, and being a PR, I have a Malaysian passport. I feel like Singaporean lah, but sadly, the real reality is that I have to pay things. Things are more expensive for me. Like my tuition fees, my poly fees. I've not finished it because I took a loan, and then if I fall sick, it's just bad. Yeah. So and at the same time, I do feel like, okay, coming to adult, I see people around me getting into relationships, getting married, and talking about the future, BTO, and all these things. I feel like I have to save. Now, like I don't have the capacity to save. So then, like, I don't know, like, what should I prioritize on? Yeah. So, is there any advice for me?
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably having more questions than answers with regards to like knowing how to manage my money as well. Yeah, but I think like one principle that I found helpful for myself in terms of managing not just like money, but I guess other resources also is because you mentioned, right, there are different categories in your life that you have to be giving to in terms of money. Like one may be family, friends, like social life, and maybe like even like school fees, and maybe like this big unknown of like the future, right? If the future is so unknown, like how do you even know how much you need to save up in order to survive in the future? So what is helpful for me is kind of like seeing all the different categories in as like one big category of of like all these different facets of my life are just areas for me to serve God, right? And if I see money as something that doesn't belong to me and it belongs to God, then the question is like, how can I like serve God best in my current capacity, right? And so sometimes we might face the tension, right? Should I not go out with my friend because if I spend that that money on that meal I can actually like give to my family or give to church or save up. But you know, like spending time with friends is also a form of service. You know, some as like giving to the church as giving to your family. And so I mean, I'm not very sure on like what practical things you can do. Actually, I'm sure that there are apps out there that they help you like break down your different like finances and different categories to see this is a wisdom thing, right? How do you like manage it properly? But I think just having the belief that everything you have comes from God, and it still comes back to a daily dependence and in a daily reliance, right? And seeking God in how He wants you to spend what He has given you. That's kind of like helpful for me. Although I do see a lot of benefits in also like categorizing them and like prioritizing, but kind of knowing that you have one master and you are serving that one master alone, it's what kind of like liberating, that like I need to like give 20% to my family and like 10% to church. But you know, if everything is service unto God, then it's how do you give 100% to God? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. I think with finances and with spend, it's unique to individuals, to the unique set of circumstances that you face, and situations that you find yourself in. And so, whether there is like a golden or divine percentage to which we are all to adhere to, pastorally, from my study, I don't think there is. And so it's something that you can determine based on listing out priorities that you have in life, responsibilities, and then of course listing out stuff that you spend on, and ensuring there's some kind of like synergy that, or resemblance, like your priorities and the way you spend, they match up. I think that's a very simple practical step that you can do. Tracking your spend is something that I for one need to do a lot better, but I think all of us should have some kind of habit of tracking our spend and knowing what we are sowing resources and money into, because it's telltale, right? Whatever we put money to, that's where our affections are rooted and grounded in. And so if we find ourselves putting a lot of money in online shopping, then it's very clear that our affections are rooted on something very material. So I think that's one. And I think with regards to finances, I've seen people gravitate to either one end of each spectrum. And so one which is I need to save really hard, and so I'm really frugal, and I just like hoard all my money because that's the wise thing to do. And then there's the other side, which is like, I'm just going to trust, I'm just not going to do anything practical, and everything will just fall into place. But wisdom really is multifaceted. If we think of wisdom in the Bible, it has kind of dual meanings, right? Wisdom, which is the practical know-how, skills, and knowledge, but wisdom also is defined as a hearing ear, someone who hears from the Lord, someone who is guided by the Spirit. And so, I think we need to hold those realities in tension, right? Yes, we are practical. Yes, we plan, we scream, we say when we need to, but we are also led by the Spirit, and where we need to make that leap of faith and trust God with our finances, then we'll do that. But in the meantime, yes, we are practical. We use the skills and the knowledge and the resources that God has given us and steward them well. So I hope that piece of advice helps.
It helps a lot. Thank you.
I think for me, maybe not so much on finances, more on crossroads. Yeah, I think at some point of time, like, or rather, I think almost every other time, I would be facing like very varying life choices to make. Yeah, so I think the question is, how do you know that the choice that you're gonna make is one that is in line with God's plan? Or like how are you able to differentiate that? Yeah.
Well, I think first of all, we have definitions of good. as human beings have a desired outcome, a desired goal. We desire for things to pan out a certain way. And so, we often define like a plan is God's plan by how much good or our definition of good comes out of it. And the truth is, and this is very stark and confronting reality, is that oftentimes plans and in my life experience, like God's plans, real leading of the Spirit doesn't turn out or hasn't really turned out to the way I think is favorable. And so I think one thing we have to come to as a conclusion is that things sometimes don't turn out the way we want to, and it is part of God's sovereign will and intent for us to go through some certain situations and circumstances. And so I think that's one. Two, it's whether something is God's plan. I think one of the things that I often battle with is I second guess a lot. I'm one of those guys who, before I go to bed at night, I think about every conversation I had. I'll think about this tonight before I go to bed, whether I said all the right things. I think about the decisions I made. I would endeavor to do something, and I'll say I want to do this, and then the next day I'm second guessing it. And so one of the things I have to discipline myself to do is to not second guess and to commit to a decision. And so in my life, I've made several big decisions, and I'll always attach a 5-mark kind of commitment, a 5-year kind of commitment period to certain decisions. And so for the next 5 years, I'm not going to revisit this decision. I'm just going to stick to it and do it, short of an angel visiting me in the middle of the night with a scroll and telling me to switch directions. But that hasn't happened so far. And the other thing could be, to seek a word from the Lord, and to hold fast to it, to constantly revisit the word, to not forget the word, to keep it close to your heart. I think that's really important. And also to remember that, you have a father, you have a heavenly father. And, the truth is we have faith in God to lead us. We have faith in God to punish us, to judge us when we fail, but we rarely have faith in God to catch us, and I think the Father is so much more gracious, loving, and kind than we make him out to be. And so, even in this conversation, the question, is this God's plan? I think, it's for us to also come to this amazing conclusion that our God is our Father. He loves us, and he embraces us. He does not wish for us to fail, to fall, to come into harm. He is good, and to trust in his goodness. Yep.
Yeah, I think that question, right? Like, how do I know what is God's plan and God's will for my life? I feel that, I think firstly, it's really good that you're asking that. And I think, I feel like more people should ask that more often than not, because it starts with a position of wanting to do something that pleases God, right? And not yourself or other people. So I think that's a great starting position. But I think sometimes, at least speaking from personal experience, when I get too obsessed with that question, it gets crippling, and I just end up like not doing anything, because since I cannot really like know for sure what God's will is for my life, I either like not seek God at all, or I just like just not do anything until I see like a bright light from heaven, and like I know like that's God speaking to me. Yeah, but I think kind of everything like changed for me when I read a book. I think it's a very good book. It's called Just Do It by Kevin DeYoung. So that whole book, it's quite a short book, but the whole book kind of like debunks it kind of like changed my perspective of what are you actually asking when you're asking what is God's will for my life. Because the author was saying that so many times Christians spend like asking like, should I be should I go to this career choice? Should I go to career choice A or career choice B? Like that to them like is the decision, like compared to if I go into this career, like how should I behave in a way that shows Christ? Like, so the author was saying like that is actually a more important question, and that is what God cares about so much more, like how you show his truth and his love to the people around you wherever you go, compared to like, should I take path A or path B? I think there is room in our life to seek God for a clear answer, but a lot of times it is not as clear. And so I think as Christians, we do have that freedom to exercise the wisdom with the transformed minds that we have from his word, to make decisions that we think is best based on what we understand of ourselves, of the situation that we're in. So I think we can go in confidence and make decisions. Of course, seeking God and prayer is so important. I can't emphasize how important prayer is, because prayer is the one that will be, like, it's your way of walking with God as you make the decisions. And even if that decision is, you realize that it's not the right one, like, prayer is what that will show you, like, what to do next. And yeah, it's be more concerned about how we make those decisions than like what this, which path to take. Yeah, I thought that really helped me in every decision I make, and doing it with like freedom and just like joy. Like, God has taught you based on your experiences like with him so far, and use that. And that's kind of how you become a better adult, right? Is when you know more of who God is in your life, and you know more about yourself, and then using that knowledge to make better decisions. Yeah. And I guess bringing back to Gerald's point of not being afraid to fail. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Gerald, do you have anything for them?
Actually, I want to ask this question directly at Pastor Andre. So recently, I just got into this job, right? And actually, I do notice that there are some office politics. So my question to you is, is the church, when you go to work, is there any office politics? I mean, it's quite hard to believe that a church will have office politics, given that we are called to be a loving community, right? And if there is, how do you approach towards this kind of office politics per se? Yeah. Pastor Andre, please.
Let me check whether any of my staff are viewing. I think we're pretty good. Well, politics. Yes, I think no matter where we're at, because of how fallen we are, and how sometimes in life we pick up certain dysfunctions, be it through our upbringing or through being informed by certain rhetorics and narratives. We might play into politics because of certain insecurities and stuff like that. And so I don't think it's unique to environments outside of the church. I think church staff are very much susceptible to office politics, if not in many sense a very veiled kind of office politics, which can be worse. And so I think it exists. So I'm just going to address office politics in general and how I would navigate these kind of things and these kind of dynamics. I think one, it's maintaining integrity. I think integrity is something that we don't talk a lot often, but integrity is, if I can just give a base kind of personal definition, it's who you are, what you do, what you say, what you think. It all lines up. It comes from the word integer, right? Which is, yeah. And so we're whole. And so how I am and conduct myself in my workplace does not differ from how I conduct myself in a church or at home. So I think that is extremely crucial. I think no doubt Christians being placed in certain secular environments, God willing, we are all in very healthy work environments, but some work environments and some industries can be particularly challenging. And one of the things I think about often is how Jesus promises us. There are many promises in Scripture, but one of the things He promises us is that we will face persecution in life. We will come against opposition. Not so much that we go and place ourselves willy-nilly in very hellish situations, but in life, just by our profession, the things we believe, the things we hold to as Christians, we will face opposition and persecution, and we have to wonder, for our own lives, whether, if we never face opposition in life, then we have to wonder whether we're walking in the same direction as He or that which we are supposed to oppose. And so I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves. And so I think no doubt we'll face opposition, and I don't think all the time it's something to be dismissed or to be viewed predominantly negatively, and sometimes it's just indicative. It's just a form of affirmation that, hey, you are who you say you are who you profess to say you are, you are living out these values and you're facing a bit of opposition, but to still hold the course, to still maintain through the course, even in the face of not being the most popular, and to have a reframed kind of definition of success, even in the workplace. What good is it to climb up the ranks but backstab everyone on the way up there? And is that what success is to be for the Christian, to ascend to the very top, to have the most influence, the most power, the most money? Or could success for the Christian look like, hey, you might not get the promotion, but you maintain through to Christian ethics, to Christian values, to Christian practices. You, for the most part, are a person who carries and models what integrity looks like. Could that be a definition of success? Could that be life well lived? I fully believe so. Yeah, and so to respond to your question, yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Andre.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
You guys asked really great questions. And so actually, we will now be going into the Q&A section. And with your questions, there seems to have been people who also resonate with what you have asked. So actually, the first two questions have sort of been answered already. So we will just jump into the next one. And this question can be for either Pastor Andre or Chanel. So the question is, spiritual growth sounds like a paradox when we are to grow to be spiritually mature and yet trust God fully and cast our anxieties on Him. How do we manage adulting and yet maintain childlikeness in our relationship with God? Any practical reminders to cultivate dependence on God?
Just a quick response. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I don't think adulting is opposed to childlikeness and vice versa. I think in many ways, when you adult and when you take on more and more responsibility, you will realize you so need God, you so need the Spirit, you so need His grace. And so I think if you fully embrace this journey of adulting, maturing, taking on responsibility, it will actually in turn cause you to be more childlike. If you are so willing to go in that path and direction. I think there's also the equal kind of temptation to just lean on your own strength, your own understanding, your own resource. But for me, growing in responsibility has led me to become more childlike and more dependent on God. A few things I do every day. I wake up in the morning. I try to practice this as a kind of habit. I picked it up from a friend, and my friend would wake up every morning and he would pray, simple prayer. He will ask, God, what are you doing and how can I help? It's a real simple prayer, and he begins his day like that. And so he starts off his day, with a kind of assumption that God is always at work in our world. He's always doing something. And the even bolder assumption is God wants him to be a part of it. God has invited him to partner with him. And that's something that I fully believe that, beyond church, in our workplaces, in our places of influence, we can bring the glory of God. We can reveal His glory. We can bring the light of Christ. We can bring the gospel of hope in these places, and we can so partner with Him. And that's how I try to begin my day. And at the end of the day, I end my day with a prayer. It's a liturgical prayer called the prayer of examen. I do that, and then I thank God for the day, and I bookend my days with gratitude, with prayer, with looking to God. And that's been really helpful. It's short 5-minute prayers that has really kept me centered, anchored on God, His guidance, His presence. And so, yeah, that's how I practice dependence on God. I think that's crucial. That dependency is not just something that we think or we have as a kind of perspective, but it's something that we can actually practice and incorporate into a kind of habit, rhythm in our lifestyle. Yep.
Yeah, I fully agree. Actually, when I first read the question, I was like, yeah, actually it's true. It sounds quite like a paradox, right? If we are adulting is about like depending on yourself, and relying on God is about depending on God. But then I realized as I think deeper, actually is not a paradox, because if we, at least how I see what spiritual maturity is, actually is learning how to become more and more dependent on God. And if that is the definition of spiritual maturity, you know, then it is not a paradox at all. And it's almost like the same thing, you know, the more, like what Pastor Andre said, the more mature you become, it means the better you become at relying on God and not yourself. And yeah, I think, yeah, echoing what he said about like prayer is something that I try to do. Yeah, because for me it's so, like, work gets very personal, because it's like my baby, right? Like having my own business, and so it's hard to separate emotions from like work. I can't just like, okay, I'm not thinking about work, but work just happens like all the time. And what, so it started for me, I think this year, where I decided to, okay, before I start work, I'm gonna force myself to read the Bible and to pray. And yeah, again, like this is not like a, oh, I must do, if not like I'm a bad Christian or whatever. It's just I find it helpful for myself to, before I do anything, to remind myself and to reorient my mind and my heart to, yeah, just say like, this is not your life, this life belongs to God, and how can you live today for him. And I think having that reminder that it is a daily decision is also helpful, because sometimes when things get overwhelming, it's hard to surrender like the entire week onto God, you know. But I think it's okay if we can't surrender like everything the whole week to God. And so it's really about, I'm going to surrender today to you, and then the next day I'm going to surrender the next day to you. And it's a daily decision that you make. Yeah, so prayer, reading God's word at the start of the day. And I think what helps for me, but maybe this is a bit to do with my personality also, like I like to talk to God randomly during the day and like just tell him how my day is going. Is, yeah, I wouldn't really call it, yeah, maybe that's prayer if it's just about like communicating with God, but it's not like I'm like asking God for something. It's nothing like serious. I'm not like in my quiet room, you know. I'm just like talking to God, saying, just like talking to him and telling him how my day has gone. And it's just like talking to a friend. I think that helps me bring God in the little things that I'm doing, and not just in the big things. You know, it's like, oh God, I'm struggling with this project. You know, I'm surrendering this whole project onto you as if it's like a big concept, but it's about the small things. Okay, I'm designing this like thing now, you know, like, you know, and just having conversations with him and knowing that, yeah, he's just there listening to you. Yeah, so I guess having, yeah, prayer, his word, and just having conversation with him in everyday thing. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Those are really great insights. We actually have one last question, and this can be for any one of you to answer. So the question is, I struggled with making friends in the workplace. How do I maintain friendship with pre-believers? They got the gossips and things like that. So it was a culture shock when I started working. How should I handle it?
Maybe I can share my how I deal with it. So basically, my situation, how I deal with office politics is that I have this new boss that just came in. So I'm new and he's new, and both of us don't know anything. Yeah, but because he's a boss to and to the subordinates that are under him, it doesn't look good on him when he doesn't know his stuff. So they're starting to talk among themselves. Like how does he become a boss? How did he work his way up to become that kind of position, and it's kind of awkward because like I'm kind of caught in the middle between my colleagues to maintain good friendship with them and also a good working relationship with my boss. So whenever I go to school, if there's like some tension among my colleagues, right, I always pray this verse in Matthew. I think it goes something along as where Jesus sends out his disciples. It tells them, be wise like a serpent and harmless like a dove. Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to try and maintain your friendship with your colleagues. You don't need to participate in the gossip. Just hear them out. I think most of the time when they gossip, there's some form of frustration that is not being heard. Yeah, so just hear them out. And maybe you could point out an alternative perspective from your boss, like or whoever is. Maybe he's doing it this way because he has no choice or something like that. Try to paint a different picture. Yeah, with that being said, I also hope that as Christians we don't participate in such gossips, because we are really called to be co-laborers in Christ. And really, I think when we work, we need to exemplify integrity, Christian moral values that really honors our bosses, honor our colleagues. Yeah, so usually I try to take a neutral stand. Yeah, but of course, I haven't, thank God so far, things haven't gone out of hand yet. So yeah, but I spend time with my colleagues. I listen to them. I just take it 1 year in, and okay, it's information for me. There's something going on. There's some tension. I need to be wise in talking to or making arrangements between my colleagues and my boss. And it could help with your work, knowing and reading the work atmosphere. I think that's also another skill that I'm still learning. Yeah, adulting, right? Yeah, you need to cater to different people, and it's difficult, but yeah, we have to try. We have to try. Yeah. Anyone else has any insights on how we can handle such situations or what?
Maybe I can share. I think for me, this isn't something that is very uncommon, I would say. Yeah, the IT sector, I mean, sad to say, is filled with many pre-believers, and office politics and gossips are definitely one that comes by way too often. Yeah, be it at work or at school, you definitely see it everywhere, and sometimes it even contributes to like an accumulative situation where it becomes a war between like maybe your boss versus like your colleagues kind of situation, and that gets pretty rough. Yeah, especially if you are the one that is caught in between. Yeah, and you're the one that's like, oh, I need to like, I still need to communicate with my colleagues, because like they are the ones that I'm going to work with for like howsoever long I'm going to be there, and I still have to communicate to my boss because he's my boss. Yeah, so I guess for me, how I approach this situation, usually I would actually kind of more talk to my colleagues in a way that like I would see among like their gossips to see like, okay, so what exactly, objectively speaking, what are they trying to point out? Like, are they trying to say that like, oh, like in this project specifically, are there some missteps that have been made that maybe could have been better improved? So it's to find the objectivity out of the subjectivity. Yeah, I think that's something that does help in terms of also not just dealing with gossips, but also dealing with like conflict resolution. Yeah, I think being able to tell what's objectively spoken, even among gossip, like there is some form of objectivity and some form of reality that like we all see. So like there'll definitely be different perspectives, and they are still valid perspectives. And that's how we grow. Yeah, by allowing to see how others view us as well. That's how we grow as a person. That's how we adult. Like that, we need to also be able to hear what others think. Yeah, but to really set it really objectively, I think that's something that, helping to lead the conversation to be more objective, to be more, to be one really that helps, instead of from gossip to turn it into like a discussion, to be like, okay, so we know that we are facing this problem with our boss. So how do we as a team support our boss now? Do we guide him even more? Should we like introduce him to like, different tools that like our team has been using and hear him out? Like what's the plan? Yeah, I think that's like towards colleagues. Yeah, and I think for bosses, that comes a bit stickier. Yeah, because he's still your superior. Like, be it on the weekends or on the weekdays, when you see your boss like on the street, the first thing you're gonna think is, oh, like there's my boss. It's not, oh, there's like Carol, or oh, there's Gerald. No, the first thought is, oh, crap, I'm looking at my boss right now that's like 5 minutes away from me. Yeah, I don't think you'll be like calling your boss and be like, yo, what's up? Like, want a drink? Or like, do you want to go eat together? Yeah, you won't do that. So it's so awkward. Yeah, but I think also to be able to have casual, as much as it's awkward, to still be able to have casual conversations with your bosses, and to sometimes also like, you know, highlight to them like some things that you may have observed, yeah, but in a very gentle manner. Yeah, what you have observed maybe like in the things that he may have said, and maybe voice out some of the considerations, yeah, that the team has spoken as well. Yeah, and really help to find a compromise between the two parties, because don't forget they are still trying to learn how to cooperate with one another, and that's something that not everybody knows how to deal with, and not everybody knows how to handle at the same time. So I think as Christians we are called to love one another, and one of it is really in how we manage like conflicts and gossips, like how do we practically do it. Yeah, and how do we watch what we say and what we speak to really help to mitigate all this tension and ease them even. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Well, we have actually come to the end of the Q&A section, and thank you to everyone who have submitted your questions. Sorry that we haven't been able to reach everyone, but hopefully you have been able to glean a lot. And yeah, and I want to thank Pastor Andre and Chanel and Yvonne and Joey and Gerald. Yeah, just thank you for your insights and sharing your thoughts and your hearts. I have personally gleaned a lot from this conversation, and yeah, I've just really enjoyed your company. And also thank you for everyone who have tuned in. Adulting can seem like a daunting thing, but it's, yeah, definitely a journey of just learning and growing, and that you're not alone. So it's okay not to have everything together and not to have everything figured out, because we're all in it together. So yeah, just be curious, ask questions, even ask questions like to your adults in your life. And like Gerald was saying, don't be afraid to fail. And yeah, and importantly, don't compare your journey with someone else's. Yeah, like adulting can, I guess, may seem like a lot of responsibilities, paying bills, getting jobs, just getting stuff done. But it's also recognizing, like what you guys said, that we are children of God first. And that we have a Father who is both sovereign and also loving. And he holds your life in his hands, and he knows your future, and he will take care of you as you, yeah, just, I guess, trust and depend on him. And like Chanel was saying, continue to surrender. Yeah, and so with that, may I invite Pastor Andre to pray for everyone here?
Well, Father, we thank you for tonight. Lord, we thank you for the time that we're going to spend together and converse about these things. And God, we recognize even tonight that you are the source of all wisdom, that you are the source of all truth, that you are the source of all things good in our lives. So today we once again reaffirm our dependence on you, Spirit. We ask that you will lead us, guide us in every step, every decision that we have to make. Give us your grace, give us your peace. Even as we end this call and go to rest, God, may we experience your shalom even in our homes and rooms. We thank you for this night. Thank you for all things. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, hold on. I think there's a... Okay, just one quick comment from Joey. She said, one quick thought of the previous question. Jesus is the best example. That is true. Jesus is the best example to look at in terms of making friends and building relationships. Perhaps to meditate through the Gospels and see how he loves and serves. That is a good word and a good point to end on. And then we also have just a quick announcement. As I mentioned earlier, we do have another hashtag Ask Me Anything. It's our last session, and it is on the topic of relationships. So questions like, is he or she the right one? How do I choose the right one? Yeah, so I hope to see you guys there again. The panelist is going to be Pastor Ian and Eileen from Kamyan Methodist Church. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I think also next, there's another slide, I think. Yeah. So the sessions are actually free, but you can also have, you can also donate or give as your heart leads. Yeah, and thank you once again to everyone who has tuned in, and thank you to all the panelists. It was a pleasure to have you, and have a great night, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
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 Guys, did it. Thank you.